Great. So, panel, Joe and I just got to speak a little bit about some of the transitional topics happening in television. One of Joe's big topics there was the importance of consumer choice. Sharon, let me start with you. How do you guys think about that now, and how the importance of that as you get into more and more digital distribution places? Is consumer choice and the evolution of that idea something you guys are thinking about?
Yes, or we're in a lot of trouble. Everything's driven by consumer choice. Everything. Ad blockers, as you had mentioned, if we don't react to that and create solutions to that, we are going to be out of business. So, but people love to call linear. As soon as you say we're a linear net company, people go, ugh, because it sounds really old-fashioned. We're really redefining ourselves as storytellers, and storytellers in different formats. So, again, whether it's through our DGO app or on our websites, we really are reprogramming our content in different formats, but also delivering it in the right place, but as incredible storytellers. And the story is what has to hold up in different formats because it's different, depending on how you're delivering it. It's not always going to be 44 minutes. It might be 10 minutes, it might be 5 minutes. So we're investing in new digital-only networks also, in addition to our linear nets.
Yeah. Do you see a world then where, Sharon, where depending on what platform that I watch your content, that I would have a choice of my ad experience? I mean, is that part of that I might see in one device maybe a traditional 30-second set of commercials, in another device I might see either less of that or different formats? Is that part of what you guys are thinking about?
We are after the C3 window. Like we really believe that if an advertiser is coming to discovery and buying content, we want the consumer and the advertiser to have the experience through the first C3, so they get the full value of what they're investing in. After C3, we can play with the length of content that goes before, middle, around, in, and then we have a lot more flexibility. And that's on full length content. On shorter form or content that's not on our linear networks, we can do anything we want. We really have complete freedom. One of the beauties of our company is we own 100% of our content. So we don't have any restrictions. And that's where this conference is so exciting for us, because creativity and kind of breaking that traditional model is what we're looking to do.
Yeah, interesting. And we'll definitely want to come back to the measurement piece, which I think has a lot to do with that. So Ben, let's bring you into the conversation. As you think about working with your advertisers, and as you talk to them about good investment vehicles, and you think about today the ad formats that are available in television, again, this idea of new distribution points and therefore consumer choice, what are you talking about with your advertisers? How do you digest a world of television that maybe gets past the standard set of 15s and 30s, and how far along that conversation are you guys with your clients? Where are we from that perspective?
Yeah, certainly the future is here, but it's not evenly distributed, as we hear over and over. The consumer choice conversation is an interesting one, because at first you look at it as a sort of like world peace or free beer. You can't have enough of it. Everyone loves it, and more is always better. But I'm not sure I entirely buy the idea that people want to be an active participant in their advertising experience. At least in the US, the average American watches 5 hours of TV a day. And they're not doing that because they like to make choices. They're doing that because they like to be entertained. And they want that to be as easy an experience as possible. I mean, Joe, you like to talk about Hulu. At their new fronts this year, they said we spent 2 years developing our paid product, and we're pleased to announce that it was an utter failure. All right. And now the reason they're pleased is because they want to make sure the advertising model makes sense. But the reason why it was a failure is because there's friction. People, in my mind at least, and this is not, again, evenly distributed, they just want to enjoy programming. To have to sit down in this sort of dystopian future of every time an ad pod comes up, you say, oh, dear Joe, are you interested in seeing a home improvement ad, or perhaps a soft drink ad? It's not the way that we expect to have that. So I'm a little bit off topic here, but I think that it's good to think of. I think it's important to understand that the choice isn't an infinite benefit, and it's our job to provide a good experience, but not necessarily a choice at every moment in the process.
Well, I think so. That's a good kind of connectivity point, because really what you're saying is, hey, at some point, listen, there's a value exchange consumers understand. Right, we're aware of the fact that when we watch content that's well produced, that costs money to create, that we are going to have some value exchange, and we're either going to pay for that in subscription, or we're going to pay for that in seeing ads, or some combination, right? But one of the reasons, and Joe, may I'll start with you on this, is that consumer choice seems to take such a front seat topic is because what's happened is the ad load has just gotten way out of whack, right? That we're just seeing too many ads per amount of content, and whether that's 8 minutes and a half hour or whether that's 30 seconds for a minute and a half clip, right? So maybe not in the consumer choice piece, but don't we just maybe have to deal with ad load?
Yeah, I want to be clear on consumer choice too, because I think that the difference between participation and consumer choice as to what ad to see, I'm actually not as bullish on choice of what ad to see. Like, media buying is supposed to be purchasing attention for the chance to sell, to create demand, right? Like, you could have all the perfect data in the world to know that I'm the person that you want to buy a car, but I might not feel like watching a car ad. That's okay though, as long as you're paying to subsidize my content. I don't understand why it became such a taboo idea to admit that we're buying people's time. I mean, it's called media buying for a reason, right? You're paying to be put in front of somebody. So Microsoft wants to advertise to people who prefer Apple. Apple wants to advertise to people who are buying Samsungs now. Like, I mean, that's the way it works, right? So I think consumer choice on that level's not there. I do think that, though, this idea of people don't, I agree that people don't want to necessarily have to do more action, although two things. One, if it's in exchange for reducing the total interruption in the experience, they do. Like just invariably we've seen it. And in an interactive environment, when you see someone saying it's asking a lot to have them interact with an ad, actually it's asking a lot to have them sit there for 30 seconds and do nothing. Like they'd rather amuse themselves. So there's a lot of opportunity. Now, how this transfers to set-top box and to linear and live and sports and everything else is different. There's a whole world of other kind of, what we term at Fox advanced ad products in terms of, sequential storytelling and pods that allow for lean back experiences. Yeah. But I think that the core isn't about choice for choice's sake or choice because the ad will be better for consumers. The idea is, could we make the advertisement more participatory, because people have always hated advertising. Right. Like, I mean, again, it feels awful to say here, but like, no one wants to have their show interrupted, even by the best ads. So the question is it not perfect? Yes, but could we reduce the ad load by getting them to participate? But can we make it explicit? Can we treat them with respect for what their time is worth?
Yeah. So Sharon, I mean, as you think about that, right? I mean, there's an economic reality here, right? I mean, so you guys, I hear there's clearly a discussion in the marketplace now about networks reducing ad load.
That's right.
Right. You and I have talked about that a little bit, and it's something you guys are toying with as well. How, again, economics play a core part of this, but if we can't ruin the market either. So how do you guys balance what is an economic question with knowing that consumers are really saying to us, change this model here?
That's right. Well, there's abuse, right? We've seen it in the last couple of years with the amount of ads and ad loads. And one of the things that I found that we always stood behind is our reduced commercial loads. We never got credit for our reduced commercial loads. When you're in that negotiation and you're talking CPMs, no one's ever said, you know what, there is more value in that reduced commercial loads. So what's happened, for never being called out on it, media companies have added more commercials. And now it's gotten to a point where it's consumer abuse, right? And it shows up in ratings. And if you have ratings, then it comes back to the economics. Okay, what are you giving up in rating for that over commercialization? And that's why you see now some media companies cutting back. So I do think there's a tension. I think there's a tension with consumers, with programmers, and with advertising, and there should be, because I do think there's a level of abuse. Again, we've always been limited to the amount of commercials and have stuck with that at Discovery because of our MVPD agreements. But there is a tension that we all have to pay attention to.
Ben, in digital environments, right, the ad load experiences is dramatically different. It's much less. Do you think that can continue? I mean, when you talk to the media companies that you talk to, whether it's Joe or the Sharons of the world, and you're looking for ad buying opportunities, and there's only one or two spots available in 20 minutes of content, on one hand, that must be great for your advertisers because there's a lot less clutter. On the other hand, there's a lot less inventory. It's got to be driving prices higher. So where is the balance for you guys on that?
Yeah, it comes down to the value equation. And this is the part where obviously, Sharon, you're challenged with this as well. Okay, so inventory down, the value has to increase at the exact same rate or greater. Right, but that's not a GRP conversation. It's not a CPM conversation. It's a value conversation. The publishers and the advertisers have to take a leap of faith that if there's less clutter, there's more relevance, there's more response, and then therefore there's more business impact. But only in the last 18 months that we had the data and the resources, whether it's through Facebook or Google or Viant or someone like that to make that connection between our TV dollars and the business case. Otherwise, it's easier to fall back on just the CPM conversation, Joe, you were talking about. It's kind of a bizarre situation we're in right now, where I don't know any other industry that says, hey, we're in trouble, revenue is down, maybe we should sell less stuff. How does that work out? And if we don't have that measurement piece already in place, then that's a hard argument to make.
But it is. I mean, you know, it is one of the traps that digital has kind of like brought in here, which is we measure the ROI of immediacy, therefore we drive down the price of the thing because we only see so much return, and we all know that there's short, medium, and long-term return. Like, you know, someone sees Mercedes brand built over a lifetime before they buy it, you know, when they can finally afford to buy said car. You know, the last click attribution, which has been a huge problem. Like, you know, Google can convince a shoe company, if you make $5 in profit per every pair of shoes you sell, you can pay up to $4.99 to get that last click. But that's not true, because they're sponsoring athletes and so forth. So I get back to this one struggle I have with where we're going to go next in the future of television and advertising, is that, you know, if the consumers were going to write us a letter and why they're ad blocking and why they're DVRing and why other things are happening, it's, you know, dear advertiser and network, your ROI isn't my problem. Meaning that if I borrow a minute of your time, and then at the end of said minute you're like, yeah, don't feel like buying said car, you better still give me my show. And so this marketplace, the market is for attention, and then ROI is an outcome of it. But digital has found a way to almost trap us into using that as a discount mechanism, rather than kind of the respecting the consumer as to what the real market is for how much attention is there in the world. Last I checked, there's still 24 hours a day. How are we dividing that up?
Can I jump in on that, Matt? Because one of the things that we recognize is that commercial space has to be a lot more valuable. And I agree, the consumer can click off it and they can not buy the product. So how can we be more creative in what we're programming? And that's where we're here looking for partnership with our media partners. It shouldn't be about a negotiation of CPM. It should be, all right, I have 60 minutes in an hour. How do we slice and dice it? How do you want to have that creative conversation on how I can help drive car sales? And we have the freedom to do that. And again, that co-branded content in the right environment with the right format. Who knows if it's 17 seconds? Right. You know, you need the right partners who can do that. And I think we get stereotyped too, major media companies, and doing things a certain way. And I'm telling you, at Discover, I'm raising my hand and saying, talk to me. Like, we have our doors open, we have our capabilities to do anything. So again, it doesn't have to be one way or another. There really is a lot of fluidity in the world.
Yeah, it really speaks to what you guys are driving at, right? Is there's different media are used for different things. I think, Joey, a lot of the points that you're making is digital measurement and digital targeting has kind of been maybe taken over too much of the conversation, or it's come from digital. It isn't a digital thing, but it's forced us maybe too far down the funnel. And one of the things that marketers still often talk to me about is the power of television is the fact that you can have a mass amount of scale in a moment, in a minute, right? That's something that most other places, again, while there's mass scale clearly of all across the digital ecosystem, it's not the same as scale in a minute.
Yeah, well, I also think that it's getting back to the thing we're trading is what share of that 24 hours in a day. How much attention do we have, and then what do we do with it comes second. So, you know, an example is, you know, Snapchat will talk about the billions of views. It is a massively powerful vehicle. It is a high amount of attention and energy. But even at their highest users, 60 times a day, it's about a total of 30 minutes, give or take, on their highest end users. Or as we at Fox call that, you know, an episode of The Simpsons. You know, it goes back to Ben's point that, like, there's 5 hours a day. There's a lot more time. Like, so I talk about the difference between data and where it is, and the canvas. So what are you going to use to deliver the message? And I want to give creatives a bigger, better canvas to use, and that's the only reason I think interactivity is interesting. It's just another brush to paint with. You don't have to use it all the time. It's just when it's possible, what would that look like? And then figure out what that means.